He built a game so simple it could fit on a flip phone, yet it made him richer than most tech founders could ever dream. And just as the world fell in love with it, Dong he deleted it forever. Vietnam, 2013. In a small, dimly lit apartment in Hanoi, a young man sits at an old computer, staring at lines of code. His name is Dong Nguyen, a shy, soft-spoken developer in his 20s. He isn't working for a giant studio, doesn't have investors, and doesn't even have a team. Just one laptop, a slow internet connection, and an obsession with creating the kind of games he used to play as a kid. Simple, frustrating, but impossible to put down. At that time, mobile gaming was exploding. Big companies were spending millions to build 3D worlds, flashy characters, and in-app purchases. But Dong thought differently. He believed games had become too complicated, too expensive, too noisy. He wanted to build something that reminded people of the 8-bit classics, the kind you could play for a few seconds while waiting for a bus. Something so simple it would feel like a joke. Here's where it gets interesting. Dong wasn't some Silicon Valley genius or millionaire programmer. He was just another anonymous developer working at a small game company in Vietnam. His parents were teachers. His friends didn't understand what he did. And most people around him didn't even believe making money from mobile apps was possible. "You can't compete with Angry Birds," they'd say. "You're wasting your time." But Dong had one thing that most people don't: patience. After finishing his day job, he'd spend late nights coding small mobile games in his bedroom. No marketing plan, no fancy design tools, just passion. He would upload these tiny games on the App Store, each one a test. Most of them went unnoticed. A few downloads here, a few there, nothing special. Then came the idea that would change everything. One evening, while watching someone struggle with Super Mario, Dong noticed something. The hardest part wasn't the graphics or the story, it was the timing. Jumping at the right moment, missing by just an inch. That tension made players addicted. What if he could capture that feeling in its purest form? Just one tap, one action, one endless challenge. That night, he started designing Flappy Bird. The entire concept was almost absurdly minimal. A pixelated bird, green pipes inspired by Mario. No background music, one button, tap to fly. The goal? Keep the bird alive as long as possible without hitting a pipe. It took him only a few days to finish coding. He released it quietly on May 24, 2013, expecting nothing. At first, nothing happened. No downloads, no reviews, just silence. The game sat buried among millions of other free apps. Dong returned to his day job, occasionally checking the numbers: a few dozen downloads, maybe 100. He had no idea what was coming. But slowly, something strange started to happen. People who played it couldn't stop. They hated it, but they couldn't quit. The simple tap-to-fly mechanic frustrated players so much that it became funny. Friends started sharing screenshots on Twitter, saying things like, "This game ruined my life," or "I can't stop playing this stupid bird." Memes began spreading. YouTubers started rage playing it, and without spending a single dollar on marketing, Flappy Bird began to rise through the App Store rankings. By late January 2014, almost 8 months after launch, it suddenly exploded. Overnight, the game went viral in the United States, then in the UK, then across the world. Downloads jumped from a few hundred a day to hundreds of thousands. Within weeks, it was the #1 free app in both the iOS and Android stores, beating Candy Crush, Instagram, even Facebook's own apps. And here's the shocking part. The game was earning around $50,000 per day, all from tiny banner ads that appeared at the top of the screen. A one-man project made in a few nights on a second-hand laptop was now making more money per day than most major studios. But Dong didn't celebrate. He didn't buy a mansion or post selfies with stacks of cash. Instead, he started to panic. The fame came too fast. His inbox filled with interview requests, game offers, and hate messages. Millions were playing his game, but many also called it too addictive, blaming him for making people obsessed. He couldn't walk outside without hearing the Flappy Bird sound effects echoing from phones around him. And while the world saw a young millionaire, Dong felt trapped inside his own creation. He'd built a simple, innocent game, but it was spiraling out of control. Journalists camped outside his home, accusing him of copying Mario pipes. Parents emailed him saying their kids couldn't stop playing. The pressure kept building. Dong barely slept. He hadn't wanted fame. He just wanted to make something fun. And then, one small decision flipped everything and turned mockery into millions. Then, everything changed. On February 8, 2014, Dong Nguyen did something that stunned the entire internet. Without warning, he deleted Flappy Bird from the App Store. No updates, no statements, no press conference, just a single tweet that read, "I am sorry, Flappy Bird users. 22 hours from now, I will take Flappy Bird down." The world went insane. People thought it was a prank. Others believed Apple had banned him, or that Nintendo had sued him for copying the green pipes from Super Mario. But the truth was simpler and stranger. Dong said the fame had destroyed his peace of mind. He couldn't handle the pressure anymore. What had started as a passion project now felt like a burden. And just like that, at the height of its success, Flappy Bird vanished. Here's where it gets unbelievable. The moment the game disappeared, demand skyrocketed. Phones with Flappy Bird installed started selling on eBay for thousands of dollars. Some listings even crossed $10,000. People downloaded clones, imitators, anything that could fill the void. Developers rushed to copy the formula, flooding the market with hundreds of similar tap-to-fly games within weeks. But none of them could recreate that exact magic. At its peak, Flappy Bird had been downloaded over 50 million times, generating around $50,000 per day from ads. And yet, the man behind it walked away. That decision turned Dong Nguyen into a mystery, a symbol of everything unpredictable about the digital age. But it wasn't just a financial story. It was emotional. Dong later said he couldn't sleep for nights after the game went viral. He saw people addicted, frustrated, even angry at a tiny bird. The fame was overwhelming. Cameras showed up near his family's home in Hanoi. His quiet life had been invaded. He'd never asked for celebrity status. All he wanted was to build small, fun games. And yet, this sudden disappearance only made the legend grow. Every major tech outlet, Forbes, BBC, The Verge, and Rolling Stone tried to reach him. When he finally spoke to Rolling Stone weeks later, he explained his decision in the simplest possible words. It was too addictive. I couldn't sleep. The internet couldn't believe it. A man who could have easily made millions more had walked away from one of the biggest mobile successes in history just to protect his peace of mind. But he wasn't gone for good. Months later, Dong quietly returned with new projects like Swing Copters and Ninja Spinky Challenges, games that carried the same minimalist spirit. They never reached Flappy Bird's global craze, but they proved something important. Dong wasn't chasing fame or fortune. He was chasing creativity. Still, the impact of Flappy Bird changed the entire mobile gaming world. Before Flappy Bird, mobile developers believed you needed huge budgets, celebrity voices, or cinematic graphics to succeed. After Flappy Bird, that myth shattered. Suddenly, simplicity became a trend. Indie developers around the world began experimenting with minimalist, one-tap gameplay. App Store charts filled with games that looked like they were made in a weekend because people finally understood that fun didn't need fancy graphics. It needed feeling. The Flappy Bird effect became a business case study. In the year following its deletion, mobile ad networks reported a 40% rise in ad revenue from simple casual games. The industry learned that virality was emotional, not logical. People weren't drawn to complexity. They were drawn to challenge, frustration, and pride. That little pixelated bird proved that simplicity sells. But the real story was still Dong himself. While other developers chased downloads, Dong disappeared from public view. He didn't cash out with investors or sell his brand. Instead, he moved back to a quiet life in Vietnam, focusing on smaller games and helping new indie creators. Even today, he avoids the spotlight. No flashy cars, no public speaking tours, no billionaire lifestyle, just peace. And that's what makes his story different. Most millionaires chase more attention, more fame, more money. Dong Nguyen walked away at his peak. He valued silence over spotlight, creativity over chaos. In a world obsessed with endless growth, he chose to stop, of course. Not everyone can pull this off. For every Flappy Bird, there are thousands of games that never get noticed. But Dong's success wasn't luck. It was timing, intuition, and authenticity. He didn't copy anyone. He built something that felt familiar, yet fresh. He understood the psychology of frustration and turned it into entertainment. That's what made it unstoppable. He didn't just make a game, he made a cultural phenomenon. Today, when people talk about viral mobile apps, Flappy Bird still sits at the top of the list. Not because it was the best designed game, but because it was the most human. It captured the raw emotions that define our digital lives' obsession: anger, addiction, and pride. And behind it all was a quiet man who never wanted any of it. He proved that weird ideas can become wild fortunes if you're brave enough to look foolish first. Would you ever take a risk that big, knowing it could make you millions or break your peace forever?